They whisper like flowers with the teeth in their grin. I shrink myself down, try to quiet the din. One wrong word and the chord is in session in Wonderland. Every glance is a question. I wear my guilt like a velvet crown. Ashamed before I even break down. Hyper aware, yet I still fall apart. Every stare feels like a dart to the heart. Welcome to Wonderland Unlocked, with Courtney guiding through every thought. Borderline in Wonderland, this is the place where shame wears a smile and hides its face. But here we name it, we speak what's true. No judgment can undo the real.
Welcome to Wonderland Unlocked, where emotions aren't problems to be solved, but riddles to be lived. Today, we're wading into the Sobbing Sea, the one that rises without warning, crashes into everything, and leaves you blinking through salt water, wondering what just happened. This episode is about crying Jags, the emotional overflows, the moments when you fall apart so deeply, it doesn't feel like sadness. It feels like drowning. And have you ever been told you're too emotional, that you cry over nothing, or that you need to get a grip? This one's for you. In Wonderland, crying floods rooms, starts rivers, and changes the entire terrain. So let's begin right where Alice began, by getting lost in the water. Let's start with what it feels like. Those intense crying Jags, the one that sneak up on you mid-sentence, mid-text, mid-I'm fine. Sometimes it begins with a tight chest, a lump in the throat, a flicker of hurt that grows too fast, too big, too loud to ignore. And then boom, you're sobbing. Not dainty cinematic tears, messy, chest heavy, can't breathe kind of crying. Sometimes it's silent, other times it's explosive. Sometimes you feel it coming like a wave on the horizon, and other times it hits out of nowhere, pulling you under before you even know you've fallen in. For folks with BPD, this isn't rare. It's the body's way of saying, I can't hold all of this anymore. But the world doesn't always understand that. Maybe you've been shamed for crying too easily. Maybe someone rolled their eyes or walked away. Maybe they said, you're making a big deal out of nothing, or you always do this. Maybe like Alice, you cried so hard you thought you might drown in it. Here's what people often miss. Every tear carries a history. Every sob is connected to something deeper. A comment that triggers a memory. A tone that reminds you of the past rejection. A silence that echoes abandonment. Sometimes you don't even know why you're crying. It just spills out. You try to stop it. You try to hold it in. And that only makes it worse. You say, I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me. But here's the truth. There's nothing wrong with you. Crying Jags can feel like an emotional time travel. A dropped spoon isn't just a dropped spoon. It's a reminder of the time no one helped. The time your needs were ignored. The time someone laughed when you were hurting. It's not just about now, it's everything. All at once. That's why it feels so overwhelming. That's why it floods you. For those of us with BPD, emotions don't knock politely. They crash the door down. And when we cry, it's not just emotion, it's activation. It's grief and anger and fear and loneliness showing up at the same time with nowhere to go but out. Let's take a moment to honor that. Tears are not weakness. They are memory. They are expression. And they are purging. They are the body releasing what the mind hasn't found words for. Even when they overwhelm us, they are part of our healing. They are sacred data. And yet, we're taught to be ashamed of them. Tears are too often treated like a problem to fix, or a symptom to hide. But in Wonderland, Alice cries so much she creates a literal ocean. Not a coincidence. It's a metaphor, a mirror. Sometimes the only way our pain gets out is through a flood. And what a powerful thing it is to let yourself feel so deeply that your body has to pour it out in salts and sound. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're alive. If you've ever found yourself crying on the bathroom floor, in the middle of a shift, behind the wheel of your car, in your bed with no one around, if you've ever felt scared by how intense your own crying is, you're not alone. You're not overreacting. You're a person with big, valid, real emotions, learning how to swim in a sea that most people don't even know exists. This segment isn't about fixing the crying, it's about naming it, understanding it, removing the shame from it. Because when you can see your crying jag as a tide, you can also learn how to ride it, not just be swept away by it. You are not too much. You're finally just letting it out. Tears aren't just release, they're language. When verbal language fails, when your words come out jumbled, or fall on deaf ears, or get twisted into something you didn't mean, your body steps in and tears take over. For many of us, especially those with BPD, crying becomes the last resort, a final flare shot into the sky when your internal world is too full, too loud, or too heavy to hold in anymore. And yet, crying is so often misunderstood. When we cry during conflict, people say we're manipulating. When we cry from joy, people say we're unstable. When we cry for no reason, they call us dramatic, fragile, and attention-seeking. But here's what Wonderland knows, what Alice shows us. Sometimes you cry without knowing why. Sometimes the reason doesn't make sense until hours or even days later. Sometimes the reason doesn't need to make sense at all. Tears are honest, raw, unfiltered. They come when something in you needs to be seen, even if you don't yet have the words for it. Crying doesn't always mean something's wrong. It can mean something's moving, something's surfacing, something is asking for your attention, for your care. Tears say, something matters here. That's the part the world often misses. Tears are not weakness. They're presence. They're protest. They're processing. And they're powerful. Because when you've spent your life not being heard, when you've been gaslit, minimized, misunderstood, your body learns other ways to speak. Crying becomes a kind of survival language. It says, I'm overwhelmed, or I'm hurt, or I'm scared, even if your mouth can't form the words. Let's also talk about crying fatigue, the kind that hits after the storm has passed. You've stopped crying, but you feel hollow, exhausted, raw. You might wonder, where did that even come from? Or worse, did I just make that up? That moment when you start questioning yourself is where the shame spiral often kicks in. You start replaying what happened. You wonder, was that too much? Did I ruin everything? Was I just being dramatic? Here's the answer. No. You are not too much. You are being. You are feeling. And you are communicating in the most honest way you could. The real tragedy is not that you cried. It's that you feel like you had to apologize for it. Because in a world that shames emotion, tears become an act of rebellion. In Wonderland, Alice's tears weren't just an emotional overflow. They were her way of insisting in her existence. They were her way of saying, I'm real, I feel, and I can't pretend not to. Sometimes crying is how we reintroduce ourselves to ourselves. It's how we reconnect with parts we've been trying to hide or silence, and how we begin to repair the places where words failed us. Let's talk, too, about how tears can create connection. Not everyone will understand your tears, but the right people won't make you feel like you need to hide them. The right people will say, I see you, I'm here, and you don't need to explain. And if you haven't found those people yet, let this space be a reminder that you still deserve them. that you don't have to apologize for your tears, that your crying is not a flaw in your design. It's a signal, a pulse, a truth. Tears are not a breakdown. They're a breakthrough. Sometimes they come when you're on the edge of clarity. Other times, they come when you're holding too much pain. But every time, they're trying to tell you something. What if instead of stuffing it down, you ask yourself, what is this crying trying to say? What does this part of me need? Because crying isn't just about what's breaking. It's also about what's ready to be held. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are communicating in a language the world has forgotten, but your body still remembers. So what about when it keeps happening? When it's not just one jag, not just one storm, but a pattern, a rhythm of rising and crashing that seems to follow you no matter where you go? What happens when crying becomes your baseline? When you go days, weeks, or even years feeling like your tears are always right beneath the surface, just one wrong word or glance away. This is the sobbing sea at its most dangerous. Not because the crying itself is harmful, but because the isolation around it is. When people stop taking your emotions seriously, when your breakdowns are treated like background noise, when your sobs are met with sighs or silence, something in you starts to wither. And when you stop taking yourself seriously, when you start believing the voice that says, you're just being dramatic, you're always like this, no one else cries like you do, that's when the waves get dangerous. That's when shame starts dripping into every teardrop. That's when the ocean turns from a space of release into a cage of overwhelm. This is where the emotional flooding comes in. Not just sadness, but all of the emotions at once. Anger, fear, helplessness, grief, rejection, even joy if it's too intense. Your nervous system starts short-circuiting. Your body doesn't know whether to freeze or scream. And the crying, it's no longer just about one moment or one memory. It's everything all at once. It's your body saying, I've held too much for too long. And here's the Wonderland twist. Just like Alice floating in that pool of tears she never meant to create, we often find ourselves stuck in emotional seas we never learned to swim in. Because nobody teaches us. They just say, get over it, calm down. Why are you crying again? But what if we stopped blaming ourselves for the storm and started learning how to float through it? Because we can. We can learn to navigate these tsunamis without drowning in them. We can recognize the signs, the tight chest, the foggy brain, the moment before the floodgates open. We can begin to name the waves. This is grief. This is abandonment fear. This is exhaustion wearing the mask for too long. And even when we can't stop the tears, we can stop the spiral. We can tell ourselves, this is allowed. This makes sense. This is my sea, and I'm learning to swim. Let's rewrite that story. Let's shift the narrative from I'm falling apart again to my sea is speaking. Because what if the flood isn't a failure, but a form of deep communication? What if every wave you cried was a message from your inner world asking to be heard? And maybe you're not breaking. You're washing away something. You're making space for something new. Let's end where we always return, back to self-trust. The world may not honor your tears, but that doesn't mean you can't. You must. Reclaiming your right to cry means dismantling the shame around your softness, around your sensitivity, around the intensity of what you carry. Tears are sacred salt. They cleanse, they clarify, they soften what's been hardened by survival. So here's your invitation. What if you stopped apologizing for your crime? What if you treated your sobbing sea not as an enemy, but as a part of your inner ocean that just wants to be witnessed? You are not broken because you cry. You're not immature. You're not manipulative. You are responding. You are processing, and you are healing. Every tear that falls is proof you're still here. You're still feeling, and you're still trying. As we close today's episode, may you walk away knowing this. You are allowed to cry. Loudly, softly, often, rarely, for reasons you understand and reasons you don't. You are allowed to overflow. You are allowed to feel like the tide is too much and still learn how to swim. This is Wonderland, and in Wonderland, the sobbing sea doesn't mean you've lost control. It means your feelings found the courage to speak. Thank you for diving into the depths with me today. If you feel seen in this episode, share it. Save it for your next crying jag. Let it be a lighthouse when the sea comes for you again. And above all, remember this. Your tears are not the end. They are a beginning of softness, of strength, of coming back home to your heart. Until next time, stay tender, stay true, and let the sea carry what words can't always say.